Bienvenue and welcome to One Film, One Federation in collaboration with Telescope Film and tonight's presentation of French Cinémathèque for the film À plein temps, full time by Eric Ravel. My name is Renee Ketchum, and I'm standing in tonight for Justine Barda, who is very lucky to be at the Cannes Film Festival so that she can find more content for us for Telescope Film. Telescope Film promotes international film and TV to American audiences, helping the American audience for international programming really grow. So we're very grateful to Telescope Film. They do a great job, and we search every week with Peter de Bruges for a new and exciting French film. Here is the dedicated page on Telescope Film for film and TV from France. The Alliance Française is the largest Alliance Française network in AFUSA is the largest Alliance Française network in the world, helping 26,000 learners of French each year learn French, live French, and love French with the Alliance Française. Here's a video about us. So next month, we will be watching Aline, which is a really fabulous Canadian film that is loosely based on the life of Céline Dion, and it's directed by Valérie Lemercier. Tonight's discussion, French Cinémathèque, is plein temps. And a few logistics before we start, please stay on mute during the presentation, stay on speaker view, and put all your questions in the chat or raise your hand using the Zoom feature. And if you can't find the hand thing, just raise your hand, we'll find you. If there are any technical issues, sign back in after a couple of minutes using the original Zoom link. And this event is being recorded for our YouTube channel, and the total runtime is 1 hour. So I am delighted tonight to welcome and introduce Joe Meyers, who is the Director of Programming for the Focus on French Film Festival of the Alliance Française of Greenwich, Connecticut, that just finished their 20th anniversary edition. Joe is the moderator of the weekly French Cinémathèque Zoom group sponsored by the Alliance Française of Greenwich and co-host of the Spotify podcast, Now a Major Motion Picture. Joe wrote features about movies, theater, and books for more than 30 years for the Hearst, Connecticut Media Group and other publications. In the late 1970s, Joe ran the first and only art house on the Delmarva Peninsula, the Loews Cinema. In 2012, the Mystery Writers of America gave Joe the Queen Award for his writing on crime fiction. I think I got the name of that incorrect. But anyway, welcome, Joe. And let's talk about plein temps. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Renee. I'm very flattered to be asked to fill in for Peter. I've attended his sessions, and he's absolutely incredible, so this is quite an honor. And I was pleased to be asked to do this film because our Connecticut group looked at full time a few months ago, and I mean, like is not the correct word for this movie, I would say. People were caught up in it. People were made very tense by it. People could identify with it because here in Fairfield County, Connecticut, where most of us live, there are a lot of commuters who depend on public transportation to get in and out of New York City for their jobs. And if we're very lucky here that there hasn't been a Metro North strike in my time living here, and I've been here for 40 years. So I can't imagine what people would do if they couldn't get in by a train. And just last week, we had a strike in New Jersey suburbs of New Jersey Transit, and it created such havoc that they sort of pushed to settle it very quickly. So the fact that this depicts a strike that goes on for an extended period of time and makes the high pressured life of this mother and hotel supervisor so much more pressured than it already is. It's just an incredible situation. And I was reading about Eric Ravel over the weekend, and he cited the German film Run, Lola, Run as one of his inspirations. If any of you have seen that, it's a crime drama, but it involves this woman named Lola who is in constant motion. And he wanted to give this sort of social drama the propulsive energy of a thriller. And as Renee will know, we showed at our film festival this year a film called Suleiman's Story, which is about a food delivery guy in Paris who's under all kinds of pressure. And that film uses the same style, to give it an edge and to keep you on the edge of your seat for a movie that otherwise could almost be a PBS documentary, about the problems of being a working mother. So while I got knotted up with incredible tension watching this a second time, even though I knew how it was going to end, I really admired the filmmaking style. Maybe there were times perhaps where too much pressure was placed on it, where you almost have to take a breath. And the way he uses that electronic music, which just keeps it pounding and pounding and pounding. And by the way, the leading lady, Laura Calame, who we know from Call My Agent, this was the first full-scale starring role that she played. It was shot actually during the latter part of COVID. So that added to the pressure that was on everybody making this film. But I think she has an every woman quality that, as Eric said, he could picture her being the woman across the aisle from him on a bus. She doesn't have the glamour of some of the great French stars like Isabelle Huppert and Catherine Deneuve and Natalie Baye. Well, I think Natalie Baye and Isabelle Huppert could be riding a bus, and they're good enough actresses. There is something down to earth and real about Lara, and I can only imagine as a first-time starring role, the pressure she felt of all of this movement and being followed by handheld cameras, running through the streets, hitchhiking, all of that stuff. In addition to having to carry the weight of a pressured, complicated character physically, she was sort of put through a ringer in terms of the motion of her character. It's very, very unusual. A lot of movies would have had scenes set in the hotel, showing her doing her work, scenes set at home, dealing with her two children. But that intervening time of her missing buses, afraid that there is no substitute bus, having to hitchhike, which is something I've never done in my whole life. I would be very nervous about just putting my thumb out on 95 here and getting a ride, but she has no choice. So it was interesting when we watched the film for our Connecticut group. There were people who thought, and I would be curious to know what you thought, at the very tail end of the movie, when she's on the edge of that train platform, there were people in my group who thought she was going to step off, that the pressure had just built to a breaking point. And in fact, some people, it shows you, that's what's the fun of these discussions. There were people who thought that final moment where she gets the call, yes, you have the job, was sort of as you're dying wish fulfillment or whatever. I don't go along with that. But when she was on the edge of the platform, the first time I saw the movie, it did go through my mind. But then again, I thought afterwards, her two kids are there. She's devoted her life to being, their mother. I can't imagine that she would have done that in front of them. So that was like a passing thought. But boy, this movie shows you the dependence so many people have on public transportation. And the director said, this was his fourth feature. He said one of the issues that is of most interest to him is the way people divide their working life from their private lives. And in this case, there's almost no division in terms of the narrative. And his next film, which I don't think has a title yet, he said, is going to also involve car commuters, and it's going to deal with road rage, which is a big problem here in Connecticut on our 95, where people just behave abominably. And, there have been fights and near shooting experiences. So, I mean, he's a Quebec native who's made films in France. He started as a cinematographer before he crossed over into directing. And you can see that this is a very camera work focused film. I mean, a lot of planning had to go into simply shooting this stuff because you're on the streets. I don't know how many permits they had to close down streets. In the case of Suleiman, we talked to the producer for our festival, and he said they just sort of had to do a lot of it on the run, and you just sort of keep your fingers crossed that everything goes according to plan. So again, I don't know that I could take a third viewing of this film, but I really admire the craft. I admire her performance. The topic, I think, is of relevance to countless women all over the world who have, and I don't know about you, but I wanted to throttle her ex-husband. You know what I mean? Simply never returning her call when she's, financially stressed out and doesn't know when she's going to get that alimony payment from him, and they never really connect. He finally leaves her a message basically saying, I'm sorry, I'm out of the country, et cetera, et cetera. But wow, just she is put through the ringer. What did you think, Renee?
Joe, one of the things, and again, we looked, not only did we look at this film for your film group, we looked at it for our film festival years
That's
ago.
right.
I was one of those women who, didn't have an au pair, had to run in and out of New York. The stress is unbelievable. But one of the things that struck me, and I'd be interested to hear the audience's thoughts and yours, is I personally found her in this film, and this is after the third viewing on my part,
Right.
to be a very flawed character. I really wanted to like her as a mother, as I look back when I was 24 years old with a 6-month-old, and running like mad to get to work in New York. I was that person, but I didn't. Everything she touched, she hurt. The poor woman, they
Uh,
called her a nanny. I mean, this woman was amazing.
she
Um,
was a
Everyone that she came in contact with, and of course it was based on her situation, but I think it's interesting, and looking at her other films, that seems to be something in keeping with the kind of role she chooses. But I wonder if anybody else found her flawed.
Well, it's funny, Renee, that I made a note when I was watching it this time. Flawed character pushes everyone around her for help. Film seems to understand that we will lose patience with her at many points in the story. And I think that's true. That it's like, and also the piling up of everything and like really buying a trampoline.
Yeah, I mean that was first of all, it was out of her price range.
Yes,
So she was trying to be something that she wasn't, which I think also ran true throughout the rest of the film. And then
yes.
God forbid she was putting it together at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was just one thing after another. It's like everything that could go wrong, you just about went wrong in her life during this strike. It was quite something.
So and anybody who has any comments or questions can
Yeah,
either raise
please.
their hand or click on the hand thing. So it looks like Pascal and Patrick. Pascal, do you want to start? Joe, do you want to call on Pascal?
Of course. Yes, I'd love
Sure.
to hear.
Hi. Thank you for giving me uh, the first mic time.
Of course.
So I do agree she's flawed, but she's just human.
Hmm.
She's just a human. She's not. I was very surprised, Renee, when you said we actually want to like her. I liked her because she's flawed as a human being, and I actually commended her on the calm that she keeps with her children. It's really at the very end when the cup is totally full and overflowing that she's kind of losing it, but not totally. She remains calm in this in with them, so she remains a quote unquote good mother in my views. She is able to remain professional when she goes to the interviews, even the second one, after having run and and all the craziness. So she has this quality of being able to really quiet herself and and regroup and I would have lost it way before.
Me too. You know, and I did like her. It was just, it's kind of like I've had friends who've been in distress, you know, and it puts a lot of pressure on you. But no, I thought she was behaving well, considering everything that was going on in her life, and that she was able to juggle everything. I know I could probably never do all of that, plus traveling, plus having strikes, plus missing buses, plus having no way to get from the city back home. You know, it just mind-boggling challenges she faced.
Patrick has his hand up, Joe.
Okay.
Patrick, do you want to unmute?
I don't know how to put my hand up here.
Hello.
All right, Patrick's not unmuting, so hang on a second. Let's just ask him to unmute. Otherwise, we can go to Laura until Patrick unmutes.
Okay.
Laura?
Yeah, similar comments about her being flawed. I think all good characters are flawed. But what I think he was illustrating with all the things she was juggling was that we have this pressure as working mothers to be superwoman and be good at everything and do everything, have the birthday party, have it be fabulous, do a good job at work, you know, advance our career, date, which for her was just a stolen kiss, but and try to find help for her children, which like that was a very difficult thing that she didn't have very she didn't treat her caregiver well, but she also was really stuck with her lack of ability to get there on time. So I just wanted to make that comment about the Wonder Woman. I thought he captured that well.
I did too.
Jeanette has her hand up.
Great.
I don't know how to put my hand up here.
Okay.
You have it up, Jeanette.
Yes, it's
Hello.
under react. It's under react. Okay, so I really liked her, even though, as you said, she was a flawed character, and she seems to wind up using people to a certain extent. I mean, she kind of goes just over that line of asking someone for help and you know, manipulating them into doing something that they really shouldn't do, and that she knows they shouldn't do.
Yes.
But well, one thing was I kept waiting for her to explode. And I thought it was very interesting that the only time she cried was at the very end when she finally had good news.
Right.
She finally let it out. So that was, I think, a very moving moment of acting on her part. But one thing that really struck me was the lack of emotional support that she has. Her husband is ex-husband is obviously absent, and I also wanted to strangle him. But she doesn't seem to have anyone she can really turn to, and that I find that troubling. But perhaps that is a problem for modern women or women these days, because as you've all said, to a certain extent, they have to be or are expected to be Wonder Woman and do it all. The person that I felt she maybe wronged the most was Ines. I think that's her name.
Oh yes, the new maid.
The new maid. And especially in her discussion with her CV, her supervisor, you know, she says, well, she was new and she wouldn't have worked out anyway. She wouldn't have been very long. And yet Ines is in the same exact situation as she is, because
Yes,
she also has 2 young children that she's trying to support.
yes,
So that really struck me.
me too.
And there were moments where I felt like she was just kind of going through the motions with her kids. As someone mentioned, she seemed just a little disconnected from them. And it's true, she did a good job of not, blowing up at them. She kept her calm in situations where I think I would have been very hard pressed to do so. But she seems just a little, just kind of going through the motions because she thinks she has to be a good mom and that's what she has to do. Although I don't doubt that she loves her kids.
And I was interested in that friend, again, the friend doesn't really understand her. She wants her to stay for a drink when she's home exhausted, just, didn't realize her kids were being shifted to her friend's house because she was listed on her emergency contact. And I thought, a lot of times, we just don't see what's really going on with a friend. You want to have fun with her like you used to in the old days, but she's moved to a different place. And again, I think she doesn't have friends because she can't schedule them. It's very sad.
Joe, Craig has his hand up. Craig,
Okay.
you want to unmute?
Hi.
Hey,
Yeah.
Craig.
Hello. That's Craig is actually my partner. This is William, but
Well,
yes. So I too was struck by the callousness that she had towards Inez and that situation. But through the whole film, I kept having this feeling of I want to call my mother and thank her for,
yeah,
because I know my mother went through all of these things, and the the main character is making very poor decisions, has been pointed out financially and everything. But I've witnessed that firsthand where you just have to put one foot in front of the other and keep going, even if it's you just must keep going, which I think is kind of an amazing thing that women particularly are forced to do. One of the things that I also was struck by a couple of hours after the movie was over, I was thinking about the ending, which did seem sort of a Deus Ex Machina kind of
yeah,
artificial thing, but that's not really a happy ending, because in the interview, the interviewer is saying, well, you will have less time with your children. Oh, you
yes,
live further out. Isn't this going to be difficult for you? And now she has this new job, but her situation is still what the situation is.
you're right.
And that, because of the tension of the film, you feel this release when she is happy, but it took a couple of hours for me to be like, wait a minute, actually she's still screwed. So that was something I definitely noticed.
Yeah, I'm a glass half full kind of a guy. So what I was thinking at the end was, well, maybe it'll be much better paying. And as her
Hmm.
kids are getting slightly older, maybe she'll be able to afford to live closer to the city. So I was writing
She can
sort
have
of,
her car repaired or something. Yes.
but you're right. You're right. In the
Yeah.
immediate future, it's probably going to be more difficult, particularly if
Yeah.
this darn strike isn't settled soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Joe, I think Suzette is next because she
Great.
wasn't sure how to raise her hand. Then we
I
have
figured it out. Oh my God.
okay, I'm sorry, Suzette. And then we have Denise and Pascal.
Great.
Um, I have just a few comments about it. I started watching the movie Saturday night when I was really tired. I did a yoga workshop that day, and I thought,
Great.
this thing's on Monday. I better watch the movie so I can start to think about it. And I thought, well, I'll just watch it for an hour and then I'll go to bed. my adrenaline was so revved up. I literally sat on the edge of the couch.
Yes.
So it really worked. I think it was the production, the sound, the editing, everything. I mean, just I have goosebumps now. It really got me going, and I had trouble sleeping. Her story just kept cycling through my head overnight. But ultimately, I mean, I have cats, I don't have children, and this movie is the reason why. Um, that I thought she was very resourceful and
Yes.
very quickly coming up with solutions to problems and thinking through things really fast and strong-willed in pushing away help. But I was curious about like what suburb she was in, that she was so far away, and if she was in a community with kids in the school and their families and stuff, that she didn't have more support from her suburban community out there.
Yeah, they really don't devote any time to sort of the nuts and bolts. You don't
Oh,
find
okay.
out, I mean, you don't find out exactly how far out she is, or on a good day, how long it would take her to
To
get.
get in, yeah.
I because of what I'm used to here in Fairfield County, I was thinking, well, she's maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours outside of the city,
Wow.
which is not uncommon. I mean, when I grew up in Philadelphia, I knew people that had a similar commute from the suburbs, and it's just, I've always been lucky to be close to where I've worked. So I can't imagine the stress that would add to
Right, right.
your
I
life.
mean, I remember reading about those transit strikes in Paris,
Yeah,
and Paris is so small. I mean, I literally have walked across it, in
yeah,
hours or something. Or people ride bikes, or there are other ways that once you're in the city, you can get around more easily. But I never thought about the people that commute in, and that was like a big eye opener for me.
me too. Me too.
I think Denise is next. Denise?
Yeah, I'm French,
Hi.
so I'm familiar with the strikes and then
Uh-huh.
people deal with hitchhiking to get
Sure.
to work, etc. So to me, it was part of the way of life in Paris,
Yes.
and it happens,
Yes.
as somebody put, it's a right in France to strike. So I think I think they mentioned that she probably lived around the eastern part of the suburbs, probably an hour and a half to. But she is where she is because she wants to be near where the father of the children is.
Right.
So, and it's not her choice. And she also had a great job 4 years prior. She has a master's and she's educated. The job that she has in a 5-star hotel is actually a good job.
Yes.
And I also felt that she's very resourceful. Talking to the doorman and getting ways to get around and finding taxis when there are no taxis to be had. And she gets what she wants. She gets, the interview. She goes. She succeeds in what she wants.
Yep.
Although she's almost, ready to lower her standards by accepting to work in a grocery store, and yet,
Yes.
she's not even, willing. I mean, hired. She's lowering. She's going really to finding a way to survive, survival.
Yep.
At that point. I did think also when she's on the platform at the station that she might be jumping, and I also thought about that.
Yeah.
And but however, when the movie ends, I'm saying you're happy, but nothing is solved. Nothing is solved. I mean, how are you going to have to have people taking care of your kids? I mean, it's going to be even worse than. So this was, to me, it was not a good resolution. I mean, as you said, she might get a better pay. She might get she might be able to get childcare more easily, but the husband is still there.
Yeah.
She has to deal with him and the kids, are very little. So I don't think it's going to get much better for her. We don't know.
We don't know, and when you talk about the strike, what I thought was interesting too was we see through her work in the hotel why people strike, because we see sort of the brutality of that working setup, where she's under the thumb of her supervisor, her workers are under her thumb. And sadly, when you're at work, people don't want to hear why you're not doing what you're supposed to do. They just want it to be done, So I thought it was a really good portrait of sort of how cold business can be in terms of accepting your problems. All they want you to do is show up on time, do the job, go home, no problems.
And they just fire her then. She's just fired with no.
Absolutely. And
Right.
apparently she was a good worker. There's a strike. She's had some problems, and it's just, you're out.
But I'm sure she would be collecting unemployment.
Right.
But you
right.
cannot. Yeah.
Right.
Le chômage, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, I thought the hotel side of it was fascinating. Here you have this 5-star hotel with these celebrities who act like pigs, frankly.
Amazing, yeah.
And yet it wouldn't exist without this solid base of all these hardworking women who are rushing around making sure that room is ready.
Everything is just so perfect. I mean,
And then the irony of when she has to stay overnight in the city and she's in that sort of dumpy hotel, she's checking it out,
yeah.
and she's going to change the sheets because she doesn't know what is involved. I just thought there were a lot of levels to this
Mhm.
movie, about working and about putting a life together. And I've been lucky that I've had basically good jobs with understanding bosses. But if you have a bad boss, your life can be hell. So yeah, fascinating. This movie's only an hour and 25 minutes long. I don't think we could stand it if it was much longer with the tech. But I mean, he has jammed so much into this film. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So, Joe, I think Pascal has another question, and then
Okay.
we also have a very interesting comment from Michelle in the chat. If
Great.
Michelle wants to raise her hand so she can express that. I don't know where Michelle is. So let's start with Pascal, and then we'll find Michelle.
Okay.
Thanks. I don't know if it's because we are both French. I was very I agree very, very much with what Denise said. And I thought she was the epitome at the same time of the French Parisian, or even if she lives elsewhere, I mean, outside of what is really considered Paris. In the fact that she has what we call in France the système D. So that means système D, like démerde, which is resourcefulness.
Yes.
And in that, I do hear what someone said about the relationship that she has with Ines, and that is not really nice. No, I agree.
No.
But at the same time, she's on a survival mode, and she is using the system D to the fullest.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that she has pretty much to survive, is the resourcefulness that she's good with. She's really good at it. So yeah, and as far as the strike, just to finish
Yes.
on, it seems to me, and I'm not sure, and maybe someone knows, it looks like it was the very big ones, because at one point we see in the movie all the garbage.
Right.
So I remember when the garbage piled up like that, it was that major big strike, not one of the usual one, but
Sure.
that really was drastically bigger than any other one in Paris. So not know if it's the same time.
Right.
Anthony, I think you're next. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. I agree
Hi.
that the strike might have been the one associated with the retirement change, because that was a gigantic strike.
Okay.
I want to talk about how profoundly sad I felt, both for the protagonist as well as society in general, that your families of birth really don't help you anymore. I mean, no brother, no sister, no mother, father.
Yes.
For her ex-husband, wasn't getting his parents involved, his siblings involved. You can understand friends not being able to help as much, but family, she was getting no help at all from her family or his family.
Right.
I wondered why she didn't just bring the kids to him and say, here, I can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, it is sort of enclosed where there's a lot we don't find out, about any kind of support. Like, are her parents both dead? I mean, but I think because we're in a particularly stressful moment, he has cut this down to be very lean, just the immediacy of the situation she's stuck in during this strike, and I don't know if there was a wonderful comedy in the early 70s called The Out of Towners, which Neil Simon wrote, based on strikes that were then very common in New York. And this couple arrives from Ohio, and there's a transit strike, there's a garbage strike. This movie reminded me of that, although that's done for comic effect. But these strikes can just bring a place to an absolute halt. And yet, the workers are striking, I think, generally for good reasons, and like I said, I would organize those maids in the hotel, if I was working there, because they're really being pushed to and poor Inez, the thing I felt so guilty about her was, she's struggling to get this job, keep this job, and then our protagonist is asking her to cheat for her using that pass, but she has no choice. You could make a movie about Inez's life, that would be, I think, equally compelling and tense.
Jean, you have your hand up. John, can you unmute? Okay, we're back to, I think, Meek, did you have something to say? I saw that you had something to say in the chat. Can you unmute?
There's Jean there with the hand.
Hello.
Meek?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, welcome. What struck me is she had a master's in marketing. She had a very big job before.
Yeah.
Then she had 2 kids. I think she took an interruption. Then the only thing she could find was being like a super maid in a super hotel.
Right.
But she was totally, miscast to begin with. So she was dying to find a better job.
Yeah.
And then in France, when you have a full-time job, once you get it, you're good for life. It's very difficult to fire you. So she will have far more protection in that job. That's why the title was full-time, because it gave her that assurance she has that job. And I personally have been in exactly the same situation she was. Once you have money, you can deal with things. And that's why at the end, it was so wonderful that she got the job, because I was so afraid she was going to do an Anna Karenina, on the railroad tracks.
Me too. I was terrified.
So anyway, that's my point.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jean, we've been waiting. Jean, can you unmute?
Désolé. Okay.
Told you it was that, John.
Yeah, I mean, that film,
Not John, she's Sean.
I had to watch it in 2 parts. I've been working full time, running at that speed in my car, commuting an hour work to my job. And I was a single mom. I thought she was amazing. I mean, the running through Paris to get to her job was like, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that in a film before. It was so realistic.
Yes, I can see it.
And I mean, I came in like a few minutes late. I'm going through, what? She's a flawed character. Like, are you kidding? It was like a freaking, I mean, yeah, I couldn't even believe she could get home and be so nice with her kids. She clearly loved them. And the trampoline thing, I would totally do that. That was like, I was weeping. She's assembling it in the middle of the night because she wants her kids to have a great birthday party.
Yes.
Oh my God. But I mean, yeah, I mean, there were so many cringe. I think it was when the boy fell out. I just like, I had to turn it off. I think I just didn't even want it. I mean, I just thought the filmmaker, like someone commented on that. It was so, and when she kissed the guy under the hat when he fixed.
Yep.
Oh my God. I mean, they're so realistic that people would do stuff like that because she's so desperate and grateful. I mean,
Yes.
she didn't know if he was married or not. I mean, but he was cute.
Yes.
Prince Charming. I mean, anyway, I just thought the filmmaker, I've never seen any of his films before, but, and I've seen her in a lot of things.
Yeah.
I don't know. I read all the notes. I don't know what she falsified to get but I was so glad she got it. And yeah, I thought it was a very happy end. She's going to be able to hire a nanny she's going to have a much better paying job. She's going to be doing what her qualifications or education. If anyone here has ever, I mean, working as a maid, that is a really hard job, what she was doing.
Yep.
And that is, I mean, it would maybe a good paying job, but not like what she was going to be doing for the marketing. So
that is hard work. I worked in a hotel in college, and I was at the front desk and I worked in the kitchen too, but those maids that had to turn over a room and they once in a while they would call me up to show me the disaster. You know what I mean? Just do you believe these people were only in the room for 10 hours and they did all of this? It just my admiration for hotel staff ever since then has just been off the charts.
Jeanette, did you have something else to say?
Yes. Well, our conversation has been very rich, and so I keep thinking of things.
Sure.
And okay, so I'm going to mention several different things in response to what's been said. You were talking about the people on strike. I thought it was worth noting that during one of the radio interviews that we overheard, because we overhear these radio interviews and TV news, what I assume was a worker on strike was saying that he hadn't seen his kid for 10 days. So his working conditions were such that I don't know, his hours, whatever they were, meant that he didn't even have the chance to see his own child for 10 days. And that was one of the reasons that they were on strike, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's definitely that parallel with what we see her doing as a maid in the film. The other thing that occurred to me listening to people talk about the new job, it's certainly true that the interviewer describes it as being even more demanding, but what struck me was, and perhaps our French discussion members could maybe comment on this, if it's whether or not this is still true today.
When you come in,
but
more flexibility when you come in for the most part.
Somebody's off of mute, I think. But
yes,
Jeanette, you keep going and we'll find out.
Okay, so at least when I was living there for a short time, a lot of companies had childcare on site, like les crèches. And that was simply, the French didn't have, and I assume this is still true, but I don't know for sure. They don't have the kind of childcare crisis that we do in the United States.
No.
But they had a childcare on site, a nursery where the working moms could drop off their kids. They could go down and see them during the day or at lunch and then pick them up at night. So that job might actually be better in some respects. It looked like it was a big company.
Yeah.
So,
The kids were going to school. They were past the creche stage. They were 5 and 7. Creche is for babies.
but don't they have, isn't there child?
No, when the kids are going to school, like they were, do you remember the lady would take them to school in the morning and pick them up at night? No, she is past the creche stage.
But
The kids are now in school.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
was thinking
Different.
about the summer. I'm not sure how that works in the summer.
In the summer, you know, do you remember she was talking to the husband saying, can you take them, or can your parents take them?
Yeah.
Or they have what they call colonie de vacances. It's a whole other ballgame.
Right.
But
Okay,
way
so
past the crash time.
okay, so that's okay, you answered my question. Thank you.
Mhm.
The other thing is, I hope at some point we talk about the camera work and the images.
Oh,
And it's thinking about the suicide, the possibility of suicide when she's standing on the quay next to the train tracks. That also struck me, and I was really afraid she was going to do it, even though I didn't think she'd do it in front of her kids. But part of that was simply because the camera stayed on her for so long.
yes.
I don't recall if it was one shot or not, but it was such a long time that she was standing there without the camera moving away from her or showing us anything else, that it really gave you that
And
feeling.
the sound of the approaching train, you know, I think Gravel's background as a cinematographer really comes into play here, because so much of the story is told through visuals without a lot of dialogue, you know, and that's pure cinema, you know. So I think he really knows how to put images together to tell even the way he held that shot so long at the end when she gets the phone call. It's all in one take, and there's an amusement ride going behind her, you know. He decides to slow the movie down at that point for one long scene, because for one thing, it's going to be a quote happy scene, you know, and you're finally getting a chance to relax a little bit like she is, you know. So I think he's a brilliant director.
Well, there was one thing that also struck me, the images. When I think of Paris, of course, I think more of the touristic side of it. And the
Sure.
beauty of it. But what we see of it, even when we see it, and the images that are from her point of view in the train and the bus, etc., they're almost dreamlike. There are kind of odd lighting effects, and it's the same. It's shot almost in the same way that her dream is shot.
Right.
And so it's almost as if that side of Paris doesn't exist.
Right.
She has her life in the suburbs and then her life at work, and it's just completely different from what we normally think of regular life in Paris.
She can't enjoy the Parisian life because she's too busy. Yeah.
Anne has her hand up, and then William has his hand up again. Anne,
Great.
welcome.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, we were talking about the filmmaking and the scene where she gets the job, and I did, and you know, you don't really know whether that's going to solve her problems or not, and I thought it was very effective, to me anyway. The merry-go-round was going around, and it was like, did she grab the brass ring? Did she do it? And or will she just be, back on that round? You just don't know, but you just keep going. And I thought, I had been in great agreement with some remarks that William, I believe, made earlier about how sometimes you just have to put one foot in front of the other, and people are trying to tell you what you should do, what you got to do, how you could do it, and you just know you have to keep going. You don't even have the luxury sometimes of doing what might seem like the most obvious thing.
Totally.
And I have, I think it is the question of survival mode. Obviously there's these decisions that she made, but I think those are decisions people do make when they're desperate, and none of them even very great, like getting someone to, swipe in and out your card for you because it seems like your only option because you can't tell your employer you're looking for, you know,
Right.
I thought that was very realistic. And then at the same time, she was appreciated at work because she, you know, could be put in charge and she was resourceful and they liked her for that, you know, all that gumption and get-go. But very well done film. And I think there are not too many actresses that you could really want to see so close up and really watch for that long of a period of time. And she can do such different things as she has in other films.
Oh,
You know, it was interesting to see her do just something realistic and not comic, because she's so gifted in all these kind of acting gifts.
oh, yeah, absolutely. No, she did, as he said in that interview, she looks like somebody you would see over on the other side of the
Yeah.
bus.
Completely believable.
Yeah.
And I could not watch it. I watched it with English subtitles, kind of forgetting I usually try to put on the French subtitles. But then I was like, I cannot watch this a second time. It's too stressful. Reminds me too much of my commute and working life.
William, you're back on.
Yeah, I just was thinking about, there's been a lot of talk about the scene on the side of the train station where we all got the idea that she may be ready to jump, and that was something that struck me as a real skill of the director to misdirect in those ways, because I'm confident that that is exactly what he wanted us to think at that point.
Yes. Yes.
And there was the sort of foreshadowing, the train announcement is saying this is a nonstop train. Everyone needs to step back from the platform. Yeah. So that was there. But then there was another scene where she walked into the rental agency to ask for the van. And my first thought is she's going to go home and pack the kids up and go away from the house to get away from the bank.
Interesting.
And I thought that it was really skillful misdirection from the director. And then just another comment on the skill of the actress, or perhaps with the director, when she was the maid at the hotel in that uniform and she put her hair up, she looked like a completely different anonymous person, which is what hotel maids are supposed to. But it was just a very, I thought, skillful touch that she's stripped of all personality, like an automaton at the hotel, which is, you know, what these jobs do to people.
Totally.
She was always with the beautiful scarf, and she was trying to be an individual and a woman. And then, you know, she goes into this mode of being a functionary servant, you know.
Yeah.
John, and thank you, William. John, did you have another question? I see your hand still up. Asked to unmute. I think we have, all right, John, can you hear us?
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I forgot to lower my hand. So I'll just, yeah, I think the filming, like, I'm glad the discussion is going a little bit more towards the filmmaking of, yeah, okay. I bet I was, sorry, I'll lower my hand.
Thank you.
Well, what about the score? We've talked a lot about the cinematography. I think, if I'm not mistaken, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, that the score won a César for this film.
I think the score is key to all of it, because it's just an undertone during most of the scenes, and I think we almost forget, and it's working on our nerves along with the images of what we see. It's some kind of electronic music, you know, and I believe Suleiman, which we talked about being similar, has a similar kind of propulsive, not pretty music that's just making our blood pressure go up as we watch this thing. It never stops when she's moving, never.
It's the music's incredible. So I wanted to read, is Michelle, I don't see Michelle in the group. Michelle, you had written something in the chat. Do you want to share what you said in the chat? Michelle?
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
You shared something absolutely really interesting in the chat.
So I watched the movie and made a bunch of notes, but one of the things that I took away from it was I personally, and maybe I was putting myself in her shoes. I've also been the mom that did the work and everything that the other women have said here. And I was lucky because I had the professional job. I had the money to pay for the help. I had all of the things that I needed. It was still hard as hell.
Yeah.
So thinking about being her and not having all of those things and literally being that desperate and having to ask other people, because if I had to do that, I would do anything I had to do for my kids.
Yep.
So if I was in her shoes, I would have done anything that I had to do for my kids. But man, that would have been very shameful to have gone from being able to take care of myself to having to tap the lady on the side in front of the train, waiting for the train and go, "Oh, aren't you in my kid's class? Does
Yes.
your dad want to take care of my kids?" Like that's devastating. And to me, that's how I interpreted that, that would, there'd be a lot of shame there. But
Yep.
she just had to do what she had to do to try to, get what she needed to get, I guess. That's what I was thinking.
Yep. I agree totally.
So Joe, we're getting close to the end. I was thinking, since there's so much interest in this actress, that we might want to recommend a couple of films that we've seen her in.
Well, as you know, Renee, our Connecticut group recently watched Only the Animals, which is a fabulous crime drama by the director Dominique Mall, who has a new film at the Cannes Festival. It's available free on Tubi at the moment. And it's one of the best crime dramas I've seen.
Oh, it's just unreal.
Because it for one thing, it shows you how hard it is to solve a murder if the perp and the murderer don't know each other, if it's a killing of a stranger to a stranger. And the way Mall pieces together all of the players in the story who don't know how they're connected. And then the way he uses this horrible technological thing of our time, the romance scam, which becomes central to the whole thing. And none of the other players who aren't involved in that have any idea that that's going on. And she plays one of the central characters, an unhappily married woman who's having an affair. And I cannot recommend that movie more highly. And that film we mentioned, The Donkey.
Antoinette dans les Cévennes, my lover.
I thought that was just a wonderful film. And as you pointed out, is based on a real sort of odyssey that people go on that trail in France. And she sort of learns about herself. But those two films I would recommend.
Well, there's one more before I talk about what's coming up next time. There's a fabulous film called The Origin of Evil. I haven't had time to look and see if it's available, but go to Telescope, telescopefilm.com, and see. It is directed by Sébastien Marnier. And again, it's just like,
I remember we wanted to show that at the festival.
And we couldn't have it.
But yeah, that's a chilling film.
And that has talk about cinematography. The sets in that film are unreal. So she's really in some very interesting films. And
totally.
Only the Animals, which in French is Seul des Bêtes, is without a doubt one of our favorites. You won't even believe it.
No. It just keeps surprising you, and the suspense sort of sneaks up on you. And then at the end, basically all the pieces come together.
And you're like with your mouth hanging open.
Your mouth
on the edge of the sofa, not able to sleep.
Get it on Tubi tonight if you have time as a free attraction. So
I think it's also on Amazon and something. But again, use telescopefilm.com is really one of the best ways to find out what films there are, and they will tell you if it's not available on streaming as well. And then I think we're at the point where we let you mark your calendars for June 23rd. Which will be our next session on the next French Cinémathèque on the Valérie Lemercier film Aline, which again, as I said earlier, is loosely based on the Celine Dion story. It's a really I wanted to do something, or we wanted to do something around La Fête de la Musique, which is in June. So this is a great musical film, and I think everybody will enjoy it. And Peter de Bruges will be back to talk about it. But I wanted to really thank Joe Meyers, who is the Director of Programming of Focus on French Cinema, for leading an incredible discussion. We've had a great group, and everybody's been so thoughtful. And I still don't regret saying at the beginning that I think the character is flawed. I may be wrong in your eyes, but I think that
I think
brought
we're
up a
all,
lot of conversation.
I think we're all flawed in various ways, you know, but thank you for asking me to moderate.
Thank you, Joe. We really enjoyed having you with us, and we'll see everybody on June 23rd.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.